Hey guys, so today I wanted to talk to you about a little bit of thread repair. Nothing too serious. I just did a video on sharpening lawnmower blades, and while we were taking out one of the bolts, the threads got kind of nerfed up a little bit. They're not terrible, so we're not going to be making new threads. I just want to talk about fixing a little burr, fixing a little dent. I'm going to give you guys a couple of tips and tricks on how to tell the difference between a metric bolt and a standard bolt by looking at the head of it, talk a little bit about the thread pitch, and then the diameter. We're not talking about the size of the bolt, we're not talking about what size socket, we're talking about the diameter of the bolt itself. And those are a couple of things we're going to explain to you here in just a minute. Alright, here we go. We got a bunch of nuts and bolts out here, and today I'm going to show you how to tell the size, the thread pitch. Is it standard? Is it metric? A couple of different things that we're going to talk about. So what happened is the other day we were sharpening the mower blades, and I was teaching somebody, 11-year-old daughter of mine, on how to use the 1/2-inch impact to take these out. And what happened is she held onto the trigger a little too long, and the bolt started to jump in the spindle. And you can kind of see right there, there's a little booger in the thread. We kind of munched the threads a little bit. So I was going to take off and fix the threads, but you know, I worked in the shops for a long time, about 25 years, and you wouldn't believe the amount of guys who take it for granted what the nuts and bolts are, don't really know the insights to them. So the first thing we got to do is figure out whether or not this bolt was a standard or a metric thread. Now, this is a special one. It's covered in grass, it's a little bit dirty at the head of it. That's usually how I identify them. And instead of taking it over to the wire wheel, I had another method, and I'll show you what that is. To figure it out, it was a metric bolt. They're going to come in sizes of millimeters, right? So it's going to be 8 millimeter, 10 millimeter, 11, 12, 13, 14, and so on. So to figure out that this was metric, I used a wrench. It's a 12 millimeter wrench. You can probably see right on there. You take the bolt, you take the wrench, and you slide the two together, and if it fits in there, it's a 12 millimeter. Why isn't it a 1/2-inch? Well, here's an old trusty Craftsman 1/2-inch combination wrench. I put the 1/2-inch on there. Too much slop. How about an 11 millimeter? Doesn't fit. 3/8 and so on. So I'm pretty confident that it was a 12 millimeter. Now, the other thing that I did is you have a thread pitch gauge, which is going to look something like this here. I got a kit over to the side. I don't know which one I grabbed. This is for standard sizes. Oh, there's the metric one right there. There's two sizes. So you can use this to measure the thread pitch. Okay, so in here, 0.80, 0.75, I'm on the wrong side. Let's go over here to this one. And we got 1.75, a 2, 1.5, and a 1.25. Okay, so what they're talking about, this 1.75, this 2.0, is if you look on this 2.0 pitch, there's 2 millimeters between the peak of the thread here. The tips of the threads, there's 2 millimeters. 1.75 millimeters between these two, 1.5 millimeters between these two. That's their thread pitch there. So you take the bolt, and then you find what thread pitch it is. And right off the bat, I got a 125. It fits in there pretty snug. No gap. Every thread fits perfectly. If I go down to the 1.5, it doesn't line up. 1.75 and so on. So what if you don't have a thread pitch gauge? You can use other nuts and bolts. They have similar thread pitches to them, or I'm sorry, the same thread pitch. Or if you have the tap and die set, you can simply use another tap or die. So I said 12 millimeter by, did I say 1.5? I forgot. Maybe this is just a demo. This is my 1.5. It doesn't fit in there. Right here, 12 by 1.25. Take the threads. You see how they match up? They match up just great. Okay, so now, like, say if you're in the hardware store and you're trying to find this bolt, you can go through the nut and bolt bins and take the other bolt and line it up. See if the threads fit. You know you got the right thread pitch. The only question is that you're going to have the right diameter. And if you're walking through, maybe you brought your wrench with you, then you can tell the diameter. Of course, it's going to be listed. I know it's going to be listed, and you'll be able to see it. I'm just trying to give you a couple of different options here. Now, digging through your bolt bins, like I have tons of nuts and bolts laying around. This is one example. I've got bins and bins and bins. I just can't stop collecting them. I don't know if anybody else out there does the same, but I just can't stop collecting these things. So how do I know if I got metric or standard? Well, it's all going to be in the head of the bolt here. This one right here, the camera's going to go on it. It says 8.8, and off the bat, that's a metric. Over here, if I look at this one, I've got lines on the top of it. Let's see how you're seeing that. 3 lines. If I know there's lines, I know it's SAE or standard size. This also represents how strong the bolt is. It's an indication of it. So if you got 3 lines, it's going to be a grade 5. If you had 6 lines, it's going to be a grade 8, and so on. You take the number of lines, you add 2 to it, and that's the strength of the bolt. And metric ones, it's right on the head of the bolt. Like this one says 10.9. That's a stronger bolt than this 8.8. 8.8 is basically your grade 5 or farm grade bolt. Could be a grade 2. Right here I found this one. It was a 9.8. Okay, so that's that. Now, here's the issue. I have a pretty good set of taps and dies. First, I started off with this beginner set. This is from Craftsman. Comes with a lot of different things. Not a bad set. And then, as I started working on cars, I moved up to the Pro set. This is from Mac Tools. I forgot how many pieces there are. It's like 200 or something. But believe it or not, it still doesn't have the die that I need to fix the threads on that bolt. I have it, but it's a fine thread. It's a 1.25, and in the metric world, to have a 12 millimeter by 1.25 is kind of a rare bird. So, what am I going to do? I have a thing here called the thread file. Okay, and what this does is that the thread pitch is the same. It has variable thread pitches on it. You got to find the one that's the same as your bolt. So this is thread pitch of 1.25 millimeter right here. This is going to fit into the bolt, and you can look in the side of it. You look down the end here, make sure everything's lined up. And if it is, the idea is that you can come in here and take out that, or file down that section that got kind of boogered up. All right. Boy, I don't know if that's worked yet or not, because it's right in the tip. It's kind of hard to get to. Easy. Oh, that's a little smushed too. Okay. Got a little bit right there. Actually feels like it's gonna work. I got it kind of. I was kind of half expecting it to pop out like a little piece of metal, but that's better. It feels pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run over there to the mower deck and see if it fits in good. So let's see. This is the one that we had the impact bounce around on. Bounced around, and right there you can kind of see where the threads got messed up. I'm going to come back and tap that. But this side is good. And here's the bolt. We're going to give it a shot. Got it. You can feel it grabbing just a little tiny bit, but look, I mean, going in by hand, and I'm not spinning anything. Not spinning the spindle. That's pretty good. So next we're going to take a look at this one. We're going to run a tap into that. Okay, so I got my 12 millimeter by 1.25. Just because I'm chasing the threads here, I'm not actually gonna put oil on it. Let's see if I can't get it to start by hand first before I start going nuts. Give it a little wiggle, just trying to find the actual threads. I don't want to go crazy and cut new threads. Just you kind of feel it. There's a little tap handle. Now, go on here. I'm just gonna go real slow. Oh, I just heard it go. Now this will chase the threads all the way down. It's okay, she's my daughter. Sometimes when you're teaching your kids stuff, you got to do a little extra work. Well guys, that's my video on nut and bolts thread repair. Hopefully it helps you figure it out. Remember, your standard bolts have a line on them. The number of lines indicate the strength of the bolt. Standard thread. Your metric bolts are going to have a number at the end of it. 10.9, 8.8, 9.8, 12 point something. And the thread sizes are all in millimeters. 1.25, 1.50, 1.75, 2.0. That's the distance between the threads on your millimeter bolts. Hopefully it helps. I'll see you next time.